We will be conducting this evening's Committee on Ways and Means. And welcome, everyone. And as we normally start off with, this being a Zoom call, we will take all votes and by roll call. And with that, if Clerk Semino, you could conduct a roll call for attendance, please.
Councillor Reynolds,
Here.
Councillor Flaherty,
Here.
Councillor Maglio,
Here.
all present.
Thank you very much. Okay, first on our business tonight is the approval of minutes of October 11th, 2022. And is there a motion to approve the minutes of October 11th, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councillor Reynolds,
Aye.
Councillor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councillor Maglio,
Aye.
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. Okay. We have no old business this evening. New business, we have capital items that were tabled. And with that, do we have a motion to take off the table order 23016 and 23017?
Motion to take off the table order 23016 and 23017.
Second.
Councillor
Okay.
Reynolds,
Aye.
Councillor Flaherty,
Aye.
Councillor Maglio,
Aye.
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. Okay, I will now turn it over to Director Spellman to open up this evening's hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Briefly, just due to COVID and inflation, the Institute for Human Design did not want to originally provide us cost estimates. The mayor did go back and ask them specifically to provide cost estimates, and they have provided that. The mayor's currently doing a final review of the revised report, and he will have a copy of that report out to you by the end of the week. The list that we presented of $280,000, this list addresses some of the issues that have been brought to the attention of the staff of the various departments. And it also addresses some of the higher priority items that appear on this list. And if you have specific questions on any of the items on that list, the department heads are here and would be available to answer those specific questions, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. We appreciate that update. We did receive these updates today, I believe. That is the cost estimates. So I'd like to ask the members of the committee to make any comments or questions they may have, and we'll start with you, Councillor Flaherty, please.
Thank you. I read the list. I think it's a worthy and an excellent list. I have 2 questions. One is, do we think that we can do all of those things on the list using the money under discussion, or do we think that we'll get to as much of that as we can?
The list provided was, we obtained estimates from the various department heads. And I don't know, Mary Beth, do you have any?
Certainly. So the list for Parks Department, that was taken directly from the draft of the transition plan report that is under review by the mayor at this time. The other items such as signaling, pathways at East Middle School, 74 Pond Street and South Street Playground, those are things that have been brought to the attention of the various departments, namely DPW, Highway, and Facilities, that have identified as things that are somewhat partially in progress and they'd like to complete, as well as complaints that have been received. So they're trying to address those needs in the other items that were listed. And the individual department heads can speak more directly to each of them.
John, do you want to talk about the ones you had put in? To the chair, sorry.
Yes.
Well, before anybody goes forward, it's not that I need an explanation of what the list entails. It's a question really of, given the amount of money that we're considering here in the ADA bucket, so to speak, can we tackle all of these projects? Or are these just the projects that we will consider that funding for?
Well, I think the answer to that is a little complex because these are projects that, I think they can, John may know more detail about the total overall cost of them. But I think if something comes up that's an emergency, obviously, like there's an elevator that fails or something like that, then we may not be able to do a chunk of the work, it's really dependent on what happens during the year. And where, I don't have any issue with, letting later on what's going on, but if something comes up and it's an emergency, we're gonna have to address it. But I think we did try to craft it such that we could get a good chunk of it done. I don't know, John, if you know a little more detail about, what, if it's possible to do all on our side.
Sure. Thank you, Jim. I can say that we, it's our best guess is that we can get everything done. And with the caveat, like Director Arsenault mentioned, things can change. Priorities can change at any given time. If an emergency comes up, if something else is brought to our attention that needs to be addressed right away. And also just something to keep in mind as well is we try to work as best as we can with various contractors, but sometimes scheduling and things of that nature can be very challenging. So I think we put together a list that is our best guess of what we can accomplish. But and as Jim mentioned in previous meetings, we need to maintain a certain amount of flexibility, just so that if funding is needed for something else, we have that flexibility. And I'll let Ben jump in here as well.
Yes, through the chair, if I may, just, kind of to echo what Director Thompson has said, but some of it just from our standpoint, we've done the best we can to cost estimate this stuff. The vendors are giving us 15 and 30-day holds on quotes. After 30 days, all bets are off. We're getting them as long as we can. So, the sooner we can get to some of this work, hopefully the better, but the pricing and availabilities of materials are kind of driving everything. We had some work that we were hoping to get done, and through the contract, it literally doubled through the time to get the new quotes, get updated stuff. A lot of vendors, they won't even respond until they know they can get the materials. So again, they are our best estimates as of today. When by the time we get to doing the work, we'll have to see where everything falls.
Okay, so it sounds like it would be fair to say that in the current environment, these are the goals that you think are reasonable for the year, given scheduling needs and the amount of money that's under consideration.
Yes.
The next question is really about the human-centered for design and the question of the pricing that they placed on the items. In order to get through that whole plan, I imagine it would take us many years. Like, that sounds to me like a 50 or 75-year plan, or even more, considering we just don't move at lightning speed. And so my question is, why did we insist on pricing if we know that the pricing is going to be outdated long before we get through it?
Through the chair, if I could answer that.
Yes.
So as part of any transition plan, one of the components that's required is to assign or assess estimated value of intended work or required repairs. So it wasn't a question of us trying to find what the budget for certain repairs. That's a requirement of the actual transition plan, because it has to show, again, I don't think it's any mystery that we have been involved in a lawsuit regarding our level of accessibility. One of the driving forces behind that was the town to make a good faith effort to continuously and continually upgrade wherever possible, wherever finances and need has been identified, accessible features in the town. But again, in order for this to be an accepted and acceptable transition plan, there must be associated costs reflected in that plan, with the understanding that any time you offer an estimate, there's going to have to be an inflation index associated with that too. I mean, on average, 10%, what have you, then potentially, per year, what have you there. It's been a little bit higher of recent times just due to the availability of materials and the fact that there's an awful lot of work out there. And so not getting the very best in prices as we have in years past. But that is a key required element of a transition plan, to associate costs so that someone observing and reviewing this plan can understand the financial responsibilities that a community or a business or what have you has towards making itself fully accessible.
Okay, so all transition plans have cost associations with them?
That's what's required of the plans, to identify deficiencies in facilities and properties, and to identify a remedy for that, and then finally to associate a cost, and not only a cost but a funding source as well. So again, when this plan is fully developed and is ready for adoption by the town will be looking to identify funding sources for these needed repairs, whether that's through annual allocations of ADA monies, or if we're looking for grants, or whatever the funding source happens to be. Maybe certain things will qualify for capital improvements and such. So those are key elements that are required for a transition plan. So it's not simply identifying locations, but again, funding sources and associated costs relating to those required repairs or improvements.
Okay. All right, those are my questions for now. I'll yield the floor to other people who may have other questions.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Maglio.
Thank you. I appreciate, Ed, you doing that follow-up on this and sending that memo. I do have some questions for Russell. What I guess I'm confused by is the transition plan that we asked for from the Institute was for them to look at the data, combining a sidewalk inventory that was done and looking at other points of accessibility throughout the town. And that they were going to then provide us with a list of all of the things that need to be done. And that's being called the transition plan. But isn't the transition plan actually what we decide as a town we're going to do and invest in at the point at which it's adopted and accepted? And that at that point is when we need to actually plug in a lot of the numbers?
Well, once again, in order for it to be considered a transition plan, it's not simply identifying needs and prioritizing those needs. It's again identifying related costs, which might be necessary for us to not so much defend but explain the the speed with which we become fully accessible due to financial limitations which every community has. No, I mean the plan itself is something that we don't as a community get to pick and choose from necessarily. It's again, it's something that the entire plan must be followed at some point in time. We must achieve, full accessibility. So what, however we prioritize it, whether we go by the recommendations of our consultants, or again, as a community, we look at this and say, well, with all due respect, we feel as though another item might be of higher priority to us based upon our own knowledge of the community and our constituents' needs. So, yeah.
So then the price tag becomes a bit secondary because we have to look at it in terms of other areas, like, is there also a piece of how many people are impacted with each change?
Well, I think that plays into how they prioritize things. What has the largest impact on accessibility for the most number of persons, I would suggest. Now, that's how they would prioritize or have prioritized what they feel are the top areas to be considered first and foremost.
Okay, so is this list based on cost or how many people will be impacted?
I believe it's based on the number of persons impacted as opposed to cost. What again, we recognize that our roadways, our sidewalks and such are of top priority only for the fact that people, need those to be, able to, fully access the community, as opposed to potentially, let's say, a park or what have you there, which might have a finite number of persons that might use it on a given yearly basis, what have you there. So again, I think most of these, like the top priorities aren't necessarily the most expensive items. They're the ones that I think will have the most profound impact on the general populace.
So has this actually been vetted with the general populace? Has this gone through any sort of review, this list of priorities, since we don't really have the information from the Institute? We do have a Commission on Disabilities. Was this vetted through that group?
The Commission on Disabilities is aware that the transition plan was being reviewed and updated with the Institute for Human-Centered Design. They had not seen the transition plan. The mayor has it at this point for review. And then it would also be, once it's released, it will go to the Commission on Disabilities as well.
So then I would suggest that maybe after it gets vetted through the Commission on Disabilities is when that would make sense to actually have a list of priorities, right? If we're not going based on cost and we're going on widespread impact, then that's a whole different level of criteria than what we've been talking about, which has been that it's been held up due to cost estimates. But what it really lists is the work that needs to be done. And we're picking from that list, and I'm not sure what the basis is for those kinds of things.
Well, again, I believe, as has been alluded to earlier, that, the list, the prioritizing of items on the list, the top priorities have been those that will have the most profound impact on the general populace and such. And again, the reason we hired a consultant to, assist us in the preparation of transition plans, because they have a wealth of information and knowledge on, what works best, or I shouldn't say what works best, but what should be a priority for communities in order to achieve, the maximum amount of accessibility.
Council Maglio? Okay.
Yeah, I'm just thinking.
Mhm.
I'm having a hard time with this one, so I'm going to yield over to you, Joe.
Okay, thank you. All right, some good questions. I am a little bit surprised, I guess, in the process of that the Commission on Disabilities hasn't seen this project or has seen this plan. And I'm just curious if that is kind of the normal practice across communities, that they don't have an input in the plan before the plan is actually published. Is that a correct assessment, Mary Beth or Russ, that they haven't had any input into this, our Disabilities Commission?
The draft plan they have not seen yet. That's being reviewed by the mayor. Once the mayor reviews it, then the Commission on Disabilities will certainly be receiving it.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, to the chair, but in response to your inquiry relative to whether or not this is standard procedure, in our investigation and looking into how best to, bring the transition plan to the stage and what have you, there, most communities have relied upon an outside consultant who has certain expertise in the matter of evaluation and assessment of the needs of a community to help prepare this plan, as opposed to going through the Commission on Disabilities. While all good intended, intentions there, the persons that have the greatest knowledge or expertise in these matters of evaluation and, if I might, triaging, the needs of a community from an accessibility standpoint, are these professionals and such. It's not to suggest that there will not be any input from the Commission on Disabilities. They're going to receive it on or about the same time as the full council receives it. And again, I want to emphasize, this is a draft form. This is by no means the final product. So again, there'll be plenty of opportunity for input from any number of bodies, the council, the mayor's office, the general public, and certainly the Commission on Disabilities. So I don't believe that they have been excluded from the process necessarily. And again, they will have an opportunity, much like anyone else, to review and make comment and help in the formation of what will become a final document. But you have to also remember that, much like any document of this nature here, it's a very fluid thing. There's going to be changes that will need to be made as we progress through. And as Council Flaherty has alluded to, this is not something that's going to be resolved in the course of a single year or a couple of years. This is going to be an ongoing and continuous process that we're going to be following. This is simply a roadmap, if you will, for us to make increased improvements to the community at large for accessibility.
Right. Now, I'm not going to disagree with, what this process is and where we are with it presently, that it is a draft, it's a transition plan specific to the town of Braintree. It's just, I too am a little, I guess, confused or bewildered about why our ADA, excuse me, our disability, our Commission on Disabilities hasn't been involved in this process to date, where I would think that by this very nature of their existence, that they would have a level of knowledge, a level of priorities, a sense of priority, I should say, of where our problems lie. So I'll ask it a little differently. So the consultant must be brought up to speed on and orienting themselves on the needs of Braintree for this plan. Who is the one that sits down with the consultants and provides that information and perspective?
So initially, when the process started with the consultant, our ADA coordinator, Christina, sat down and met with them. And then each of the departments were involved in, for example, school department, facilities was involved with the DPW. I know that the roadway piece was involved, the sidewalk piece was involved, parks was involved. So many different departments were involved in sitting down and meeting with them. And then from there, they scheduled inspections at each of the locations and went out and did the site evaluations.
Okay, so, all right, that's clear. It would still make sense to me that there would be an opportunity for the Commission on Disabilities to be a part of that conversation, that development conversation and of priorities. If not, obviously there's subject matter expertise as it pertains to engineering, as it pertains to the management of, say, recreational areas, et cetera, and facilities as well from a municipal building perspective. But I'm a little bewildered here by why they haven't been a part of this process to date, in any kind of a consultation standpoint. I mean, would you see any merit in that, or is there something that I'm missing?
Well, I would simply say that, in fact, this, as Director McGrath has just indicated, this was a very comprehensive evaluation and investigation of the town as a whole. I would not necessarily think that any stone was not was not looked at in the development of this plan. And I would suggest that that I don't know, what further clarity or direction or what have you there the commission could have provided at the initial stage. Clearly, they're going to be part of the review and evaluation of the plan, that the draft plan that has been created to date. And obviously, their input will be taken into consideration if they feel there's anything that has been omitted at this particular point. So again, this is a fluid document. I want to reemphasize, this is a draft document. This is not the final document. It won't become the final document until such time as the town is satisfied that it fairly and accurately represents the accessibility needs of the community.
Right, and I'm not gonna, I wouldn't disagree with what you've said there, but still I would maintain that I think that there is a missed opportunity from that perspective of those who, we do have a number of committee members who are members of the are technically disabled. So I'm just saying, as a suggestion, from where I sit, that there'd be an opportunity of that. And I guess that leads me a little bit more to I guess, a little level of frustration why it's taken this long. You know, as we've spoken about this, and I'm not going to sit here and say, why has it taken this long? So I don't want to be an impediment to this thing moving ahead, you know, and hitting some key, you know, this start point, if you will, of more public discussion, get the draft out there, let's do it. And in terms of specifics to the memo we had received today from the mayor's office, I would concur with one of the previous speakers that it looks like it's all worthy. Everything there that we have is worthy. And I thank you also for the added clarification. I believe it was Mr. Hulk who gave us that 15 to 30 day window of a quote being or it expiring after 15 to 30 days. And I can understand that in the environment we're all operating in, the world is operating in right now, from a materials and supply perspective, that, you know, there's a rapid influx, if, you know, weekly, if not daily, on these material costs. So, okay. You've answered my questions that I have right now. So I'm just going to ask the other members if there's anything further that they would like to ask, or any other concerns they may have concerning the information we've received today. Overall, the ADA transition, I should say the ADA related outlays as planned in this capital plan.
I was going to say something, but then I
Yes.
saw that John Thompson put his hand up and I took mine down because I'm interested in what he had to say.
Sure,
If you
John, go
still
right
have a
ahead.
comment.
Sure, thank you. No, I was just going to add a point of clarity to the discussion we were having earlier. I thought it would just be a little bit clearer to point out that the consultant, the Institute for Human-Centered Design, was doing a very objective review of every town-owned facility. So not so much a subjective type of thing where, you know, they need to have institutional knowledge. They were really going out to each facility and saying objectively, this door does not meet ADA compliance. This ramp does not meet ADA compliance. This railing, you know, things of that nature. And they comprehensively went through every facility and did that type of review. And that's really the work, the lion's share of the work that they've done to date is created a laundry list of things across all of town that do not meet these very technical ADA regulations. So once the draft that exists now is reviewed by the mayor, it will certainly be released to the Commission on Disabilities. It will be released to the general public as well, I believe, all to look at this and to provide public comment. So I just wanted to add that point of clarity.
That was helpful. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll put it back then to Council Maglio.
I am familiar with I was aware of the comprehensive nature of their work and the fact that it was very objective. And I think that's what will make it very valuable when we can see it. What I am still kind of wondering about is I don't understand why we can't see it yet. There was certainly a process of picking out those priorities. That was not subjective. That's not coming from the Institute necessarily. That's coming from, I guess, I don't know, town departments. I have no idea, but it hasn't been vetted through the actual group of people who are most impacted by access. It hasn't been, stakeholders haven't been brought into this process. And it makes me really uncomfortable. And it's why one of the bills that I've proposed is that when there's major work, new work, or retrofitting, that things have to go through the Commission on Disabilities, just like it needs to go through the Historical Society to make sure we're using the right bricks, and the Planning Board to make sure we're within zoning. So here we have a group, the Commission on Disabilities, that literally exists to promote access for everyone who has a disability, and we're deciding for them what the priorities should be. And I don't understand why we would do that. And I am extremely committed to this access taking place. I have been sitting in on Commission on Disabilities meetings now for, I believe, 3 years. We've been hearing about this transition plan for almost that entire time. And the fact that it was delayed for a year because of pricing that we know only has a 30-day window anyway, I can't reconcile that. So that is where I am stuck.
Would anyone
I
like
yield
to,
back.
would anyone like to respond to Councilor Maglio's comments?
Once again, through the chair,
Yes.
in order for this to be a transition plan which meets all the criteria, again, associated cost with those intended or required improvements must be assigned, so that way there we can then, as a town, determine the best cost in order to fund those, be it through appropriations through capital or grants or what have you there. So again, it was a necessary component.
But there is a 30-day window.
I understand that, but again, without any estimates being provided associated to those, we can't possibly consider this to be even a remotely completed transition plan. And again, we can't begin to do some of the other heavy lifting, which is namely identifying the possible sources of funding, not only presently, but in the future, to accomplish all the required improvements or adjustments that the plan calls out for. So again, I understand your frustration relative to the delay with respect to getting these associated costs. And I do understand that they have a finite lifespan, but they are a starting point. And again, it's essential that we have that, because we have to be able to identify in some way, shape, or form how much we're going to need and how we're going to fund that, whether it is through again, a grant, capital improvement, if we are bonding certain things that are long-term and it makes sense to do that. That's the next piece of this transition plan that we're required to include in this plan. So again, that's an essential element that we had to have in order for this to even be considered.
Right. So, and I don't mean to cut you off, Russ, there. Yeah. And we understand that. So thank you. So I just want to give the opportunity back to ask. I do have a comment, but I'm going to wait for Councilor Maglio. Go right ahead, Councilor.
So that is well noted. I get it. I understand it. I don't understand why we can't see it. And I don't understand why that is such a major issue if we're choosing this list based on priorities, not on cost, or based on impact. So it's not coming together for me. So I will yield back.
Okay, thank you. So my question then would be is that so last year we had this very similar conversation. And where were we with the process last year? Was it known? I mean, it would appear to me that it was known what these requirements are, what these impediments are for you to move the plan forward to the state that it appears that we're at today. What was different? What work has been done, I guess, from last year's capital plan and ADA request to this year's? Well, obviously I've gotten a better understanding now of how costs factor into this, how costs estimates are only good for a certain amount of time. Was there something major that needed to be accomplished between last year and this year? Could you give me a little insight on that? I don't know if that's for Director McGrath.
Well, are you talking about the town hall handicap ramp or the ADA?
So last year, so here we are, last year, this was a topic of discussion in the capital plan, the ADA transition plan.
Okay.
Was a topic of discussion. We got more information in this meeting then as far as a better understanding, I should say, of some of the impediments, of some of the requirements, of prerequisites. And Russ did a good job of explaining those to us. I'm wondering, were you in that position last year? And if you weren't, what has changed significantly for us to have been doing what we're doing today, but at this time last year?
Okay, well, this time last year, the transition plan was in process. The Institute for Human Design were gathering all of the data information. They were scheduling the inspections at the sites to be able to go out and do the site visits. So all that data was still in the gathering process to try and move this plan forward in its written form.
And was that the expectation that it would take a year to do that?
Again, like we were dependent upon this company and how quickly they could do it. So in scheduling, I mean, they went through every one of the schools. They clearly wanted to wait till the schools were closed so that they weren't interrupting school activity. So a lot of the schools, or the majority of the schools, if not all of them, were done in the summertime. And then compiling all the data and putting it in a written form. And the delay that we've had most recently was in this estimate of cost.
But this has been this ADA transition plan has been something that's being worked on for like the last 5 or 6 years.
Right. But you have to also remember too, is that, you know, we have not changing priorities, but we have made some improvements relative to accessibility, which have to be taken into consideration, even during the course of time, which this consultant has been formulating or helping us to formulate the transition plan. There have been improvements in certain areas, certain buildings, certain properties and such.
And I would grant that. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, they have to take those into consideration and delete those from the list and then reprioritize in part, you know, what they are looking for. Also, you know, they're looking to identify, you know, understand the town and identify as best as possible what should be a top priority based upon, as I mentioned earlier, you know, what is going to have the greatest impact to the general populace relative to accessibility. So I understand it seems to be, you know, fairly straightforward with it, but it's very objective. And it does take, unfortunately, it does take, you know, a good deal of time. I'm sure there was a number of revisions that they themselves internally went through before proposing this draft plan, which we now have.
Was there a time specific stipulated in this contract when the delivery of these milestones would be provided?
I actually don't know that. I was not involved in the contractual, you know, portion of the of this agreement between the town and the contractor. So I can't really speak to that.
Okay, who took that responsibility, just out of curiosity?
The mayor's office was involved with that.
Okay. All right, so I'm not going to, obviously, we are in a position today that it sounds that we've got more things in place in order for us to hit a major milestone. This is the publication of a draft transition plan. That I'm happy about. I do believe that there is a significant amount of work that needs to be done from a top-down perspective in this in the mayor's office. I don't mean to sound it's I don't know, one step at a time, 2 steps back. It is frustrating. I mean, I do have a bit of experience in project management, and boy, do I have some commentary that I'd like to make, but I won't. So let's move it along. And I'm going to ask Councilor Flaherty. She has her hand up.
Thank you. I want to be really, really clear. It's my understanding that this list that we've gotten today was developed by directors who have seen the draft plan, and they used that plan in a good faith effort to make a judgment on what the community needs. Is that right?
For the recreation piece, yes, we were able to draw the information from the transition plan. They have the transition plan broken into 4 different priority lists, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And these were drawn from the priority 1, which would be considered the top priority based on what they have identified as things that would be most important for the accessibility component for the community.
Okay. And is it can this, if that's true for the recreation department, is it also true for other departments?
The other items on the list were things that were identified by departments as having a project, like for example, the signaling project. That is something that we received the signaling equipment that was purchased. And now the remainder of the job needs to be completed with the ramp and sidewalk piece to complete that. The pathways at East Middle School soccer field, were based on complaints and concerns received from the community that we'd like to address. 74 Pond Street, the outside ramp and exterior doorway. Mr. McGorty can speak more directly on this, but identified that as a need that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later because of the deterioration of those materials, as well as the South Street Playground or Highlands Playground pour-in-place rubber surfacing. That is something that Director Halke has identified as something that he has wanted to complete and would like to complete, and identified it as a priority.
Okay, so some people have seen the draft and used it to make decisions, and other people are using other, I don't know, other information to inform their decisions.
Certainly, they can speak to the reason that they brought forward these proposed plans.
Have they seen I haven't seen the draft plan, but you have, and I'm trying to get at who else has and whether it was used to help develop the list that we have in our hands tonight.
Through the chair.
Oops, go ahead,
Yes,
Jim.
go ahead.
I think what we tried to do is we tried to, the transition plan is a very, as was mentioned before, a very fluid and dynamic process. So like I said, the first part, which has been said before, is to just form the structure to say, hey, what kind of problems do we have out there? And that's what the whole component of this is, to say, what do we have as issues? And then the next step is to involve the community and say, okay, what do you want to see come from here? And so that's like the next step in it. And what we looked at as far as the list is we looked at things that we could do within our budgeted means that we have right now, and just try to figure out what would fit into that, this current year, to say, what do we need right now to do it? And also I wanted to say that the reason for the need for the cost is to factor in how much funds do we need for a particular item. If something's $3 million, we may not be able to tackle that very quickly. You may have to spread it over a number of years, or we may have to defer that till a later time period when we can get additional bonding or things like that. So it's going to be a very dynamic process. It won't be really straightforward. It's going to have to be involved the community for a long time. And the transition plan can be changed even after it's been approved, yearly or quarterly or whatever we need to do to get it to work. So I just wanted to throw that out there. But I think that overall, what we tried to do is look at right now, what are the most important things that we need, that we feel that would impact the greatest number of people, and we have the appropriate funding for it for this fiscal year, because we don't have that community involvement yet. We don't have all the other components yet. So we're trying to look at it, say, hey, what do we think immediately we can do to kind of get some help? But it's not perfect, but we tried to do the best we could. That's all.
Okay. So I have some comments. We have this ADA budget line because it satisfies the terms of an agreement for a lawsuit that was brought against the town some years ago. And presumably the purpose of it is to ensure that Braintree would make a good faith effort to ensure that we make meeting ADA needs a priority, which obviously requires funding. So that's where we are right now. I would prefer for there to be a policy governing what kinds of projects will be tackled using this funding versus when our building projects are funded through more standard means. But I do think that having a source of funds to support ADA needs as they crop up, and I know that they can be unexpected. There are unexpected, like the back door of the town hall needed to be repaired, and that was expensive, and it was good that we had that funding there to do that. Otherwise there would be no, I mean, that's one of the ways that people with wheelchairs get into the building. So it's good for that funding to be there to support ADA needs as they crop up and to keep ADA issues elevated as a priority. So I recognize the need for a certain amount of flexibility with funding. I agree with my colleagues to some extent. I don't understand why this plan has not just been given to the council to look at, but I appreciate the effort that was put into developing a concrete list of projects that you can reasonably hope to do this year. And so I'm going to give this my support tonight. I'm prepared to vote yes on it. And I look forward to seeing that plan. I am sure that there will be a great deal of effort into putting it to good use. I think I have confidence that that will happen. And that's what I need to be able to make this vote.
Thank you. Okay, Council Maglione, final comments or questions? You're on mute.
Thank you. I actually would like to say that I would like to make a motion that if we're getting this on Friday, why can't we wait till Monday to vote?
What would change?
That we'd be able to see the plan.
Is that an option?
I would say that, I understand and the rationale about that, and I would tend to agree with it. However, I still think we have another option. We will take it on faith right now that we will be seeing that plan on Friday. I think what we will do is communicate, I as the chair would communicate to the president of the council that if that plan has not been given to us, that we table this motion for a full vote of the council on Tuesday. That would be my recommendation, because I feel the same frustrations as Councilor Maglio, Councilor Flaherty, are the same feelings that this is an important. I mean, this money is important for us to start addressing these issues, or for us to address these issues now. We know we have that list of projects that I think I've heard from the other two members is that of the committee that there is an agreement that we like where this money is being spent at this particular point in time. As was explained to us, that this is a fluid document, it is a living document that will change as things change, as priorities change. However, and that would take some time. If we were to hold this particular motion up this evening, that even we wouldn't be able to get that prioritization. And let me just conject a little bit here as well, that if we see this plan and we don't agree with it, what would be the possible next step? And actually, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Council Maglio, but what kind of concern would that cause you if you saw something that was, in your view, from what you have heard and your attendance and obviously your attentiveness towards the Commission on Disabilities and the needs that we have across the town, what would change your story from you voting at all on this after seeing the draft plan?
Well, I am not an expert on ADA accessibility or compliance. I am also not someone who has lived experience with access issues and barriers. But I am someone who is being asked for the second year in a row to vote on something that there's a plan, but I can't see the plan. It's not even that it's a similar issue, it's the same issue. It's here are some priorities, and there's a plan that says we need to do them, and the plan's coming, and the plan never came. And now here it is an entire year later, and we're still waiting for the plan. I don't doubt that these are priorities, and I appreciate the time and work that went into identifying them. I don't doubt it's been difficult working with this group to, or whatever the difficulties were in terms of getting what the RFP said that was needed. But it's been a year of, it'll be ready in 6 weeks. It's another 2 months. We have the draft. We're almost set. That I feel like we've been strung along, and I'm just not comfortable voting for things I can't see.
And I understand your frustration. I share that frustration. Absolutely. And I think my words also were a little, I'm perplexed. I'm
so-
absolutely. Go right ahead, Council Flaherty.
So given that, I'd like to make a motion. And we can all vote how we choose, but for favorable recommendation to the full council, the motion is to approve FY23 capital plan as submitted.
Councilor Maglia, are you willing to, okay,
Is there a second? You could step down or you could second just to vote.
I understand, yeah, but I just want to make a comment
Okay.
before I can do that. I was hoping we wouldn't have to, this has been a very frustrating topic of conversation for us, and it has been clearly over the last year. The performance, I would be blunt, has been poor on this project. I understand that that from the top down, there has to be a priority set. There has to be focus and attention directed towards getting this thing done. Obviously, there has not been. And that's very disappointing. We are nearing the end of the fiscal year. We have monies that have been allocated towards these projects that have been articulated in this memo we received today. There's obviously a lot of room for improvement in the communication and the management of this process. And quite frankly, with the explanations that I have received, I would expect to see an absolutely stellar draft plan produced for us on Friday. Anything less than that would be a disappointment based on the amount of time that's been allocated for this task to be accomplished. I understand the complexity of it. Clearly, I'm familiar with the complexity of it. But the amount of time that has been allocated for this project, the performance has been poor. Absolutely poor. From an executive management standpoint, I am not criticizing the individuals who are accumulating and doing the assessments when asked to do that. So I just want to be very clear about how strongly I feel about this has been a mismanaged process from the get-go under this current administration. So I'd be willing also to support this, but I will also say that I am going to be speaking with the council president about the promises made to us this evening or communicated to us through the mayor's representatives here, that this will be given to us on Friday. The vote will be up. There will be a motion for discussion. This will be open up to the full council on Tuesday evening, where I would fully hope that I am going to state my frustrations with this process. And I would imagine my peers on the committee of fellow councilors would also articulate their frustrations with this. So that said, I will step down as the chair, and I will second this motion for a recommended approval. So could we have a roll call, please?
Council Reynolds,
Aye.
Council Flaherty,
Aye.
Council Maglio,
Am I voting on approval, or am I voting on voting for approval?
this is to approve the capital plan.
No.
2 in favor, 0 opposed. I'm sorry, 2 in favor, 1 opposed. Thank you. We have one more
Okay.
motion.
Oh, yes. For favorable recommendation to the full council, the motion is ordered that the town of Braintree appropriates the sum of $4,335,000 to pay costs of the following capital projects. Police vehicles for $243,000. The authorizing statute is chapter 44, section 7.1. The project is police HVAC. The amount is $90,000. The authorizing statute is chapter 44, section 7.1. Project school building repairs HVAC, amount $125,000. Authorizing statute chapter 44, section 7.1. Project school building renovations, amount $235,000. Authorizing statute chapter 44, section 7.1. Project school technology, amount $151,000. Authorizing statute chapter 44, section 7.9. Project school library books, amount $145,000. Authorizing statute chapter 44, section 7.1. Project roadway resurfacing, amount $1,700,000. Authorizing statute chapter 44, section 7.1. Project town ADA improvements, amount $280,000. Authorizing statute chapter 44, section 7.1. Project DPW facilities parking lot and sidewalk, amount $135,000. Authorizing statute chapter 44, section 7.1. Project DPW cemetery and ground vehicle dumpster, amount $135,000. Authorizing statute chapter 44, section 7.1. Project DPW highway, 2 vehicles, plow and sander, amount $280,000. Authorizing statute chapter 44, section 7.1. Project DPW cemetery and ground cemetery expansion, amount $565,000. Authorizing statute chapter 44, section 7.1. Project DPW highway 1 sidewalk snowplow, amount $191,000. Authorizing statute chapter 44, section 7.1. And for the payment of all other costs incidental and related thereto, that the amounts indicated above for each project are estimates, and that the mayor may allocate more funds to any one or more of such projects and less to others, so long as, in the judgment of the mayor, each of the projects described above can be completed within the total appropriation made by this order. That to meet this appropriation, the treasurer, with the approval of the mayor, is authorized to borrow said amount under and pursuant to the authorizing statutes described above, or pursuant to any other enabling authority, and to issue bonds or notes of the town therefore. So moved.
Second. Step down, second.
Council Reynolds,
Aye.
Council Flaherty,
Aye.
Council Maglio,
No,
2 in favor, 1 opposed. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate everyone's attendance this evening and indulging us in our questions and providing additional information. So we'll see you on Tuesday evening. So
Thank you.
next up on the agenda is motion 23016, Mayor, request to approve, excuse me, I stand corrected. The next is a motion 23021, Retirement Board, fiscal year 23, Braintree Retirement COLA, or take up any action relative thereto. So I would like to give the floor then to Director Dennis Gallagher. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. President or Chairman. Thank you for your time tonight. And I'll be fairly brief because I think you all received the package that I put together regarding what we are asking for the council. But to give you a little background as to what this is all about a year ago, this additional COLA became a part of an initiative through the legislature to help out the retirees during the inflationary periods that we have seen, at least these past couple of years. So legislation was filed to allow the local retirement systems, all retirement systems in Massachusetts, to approve an additional 2% COLA for their retirees. Now, under normal circumstances, a COLA, a cost of living adjustment for our retirees on the current base that they have, which in Braintree is currently $12,000, is by statute solely under the auspices of the Retirement Board. The Retirement Board has that authority every year to grant a 3%, up to a 3% COLA for all retirees. This particular fiscal year that we're currently in, legislation was filed to allow the local systems to go up to 5% for a one-time year-only adjustment to help out the retirees in Massachusetts. Legislation was filed and legislation was approved back in December. However, there was an amendment made by Governor Baker before he left office on this legislation. Remember, there are 104 retirement systems in Massachusetts, and there's 102 local systems. The two systems that this amendment did not apply to was the state retirees and Mass teachers. The adjustment that he made was, instead of just giving the authority to the local retirement boards, he added an additional two-step process for the local boards. The other two steps was, after the retirement board approved the additional 2%, it also needed to be recommended by the mayor in a community, the executive, to the legislative branch, which is the council. So two additional steps were added to this. So we have, the retirement board voted to grant the 2% to the retirees. We met, Ed Spellman, board member, Mr. Spellman and I met with the mayor in February and went over what this was all about, and he was in support of this. And he wrote a letter to the council president showing his support for this. And now it's before the council, which was referred to you guys tonight, to make a recommendation to the council. So just to give you a little synopsis, so far to date, of the 102 systems that this affects, 65 local systems have gotten this far, meaning the boards have approved it, and the executive, whether it be a mayor or selectmen, have also endorsed it. Of those 65, 48 out of the 65 have gotten the full approval from the legislative bodies. So that's a little bit about half. Some of them are stuck in the legislative process because unlike Braintree and some other towns, some of them have to wait for town meetings, which are all taking place, in April and May of this year. So I expect that number of 48 to certainly go up quite a bit. But anyway, that's where we are. That is what the legislation means. This is a one-time thing. This is not going to be something we come back for every year. It's just to give it alleviates some of our pensioners in Braintree, just a little bit of a boost in their pension for 1 year. This will be retroactive back to July 1 of 2023, by the way. So if it's approved, either this month or next month, they will see a retro going back to July. And then in July 1 of 2024, provided the retirement board approves the 3% COLA, it would go back to the 3% for July 1 of 2024. But our base is still 12,000. As you know, you guys were supported and approved the COLA base to be increased to 13,000 July 1 of 2024 and to go to 14,000 July 1 of 2025. That still sticks. So this does not impact that. I did also provide to you a cost, because yes, there is a cost to this, and the additional cost for that extra 2% would add an additional 237,000 to the appropriation. However, you will not see that number until the next valuation is completed or your FY26 appropriation amount. But in addition to this, it would also take into consideration a lot of other factors like market conditions, additional employees, pay raises, retirees, and retirements, and so forth. So with the Social Security CPI index giving retirees 8% increases over the last couple of years, a lot of our retirees do not receive a full Social Security or any Social Security because of their public pension and because of inflationary inflationary costs over the past couple of years, this is what this initiative has done. Is trying to do is just to help our retirees a little bit. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, Dennis. Council Flaherty.
I don't have any questions on this one. I feel like this is clearly something that that people need, and I think we should extend it to them. And so I'm going to support it.
Thank you. Council Maglio, questions or comments?
I completely agree that people need this, and I'm happy to vote for it.
Great. Thank you. I would concur with the two previous speakers that this is something that we should do. It is the right thing to do in this particular year. I do think it was very helpful that we were provided with the actual impact costs of what we are doing for this fiscal year. And just to be clear, again, this is only going to apply for increases to pension payouts during the fiscal year 23. Is that correct?
The current the 2% additional will be paid back to July 1 of 2023 or fiscal 22. Fiscal 23.
But July 1, 22.
July 1, 22 for fiscal year 23, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Right, but these payments will then, this additional 2% will then stop come July 1
Oh,
of
yes.
23, correct?
Absolutely. Yes.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Thank you. All right. Well, the rest of the information is, it makes sense to me, and I too will be voting in favor of this. So unless there's any additional comments from anybody here, doesn't look like it, then I will ask, is there a motion?
For favorable recommendation to the full council, motion that pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, MGL Chapter 32, Section 103, and Chapter 269 of the Acts of 2022, the town council approves the increased cost of living adjustment for fiscal year 2023 of 2% to become effective July 1st, 2022.
Second,
Roll call.
Council Reynolds,
Aye?
Council Flaherty,
Aye.
Council Maglio,
aye.
3 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate that. And thank you for your time. Dennis and Ed, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
I'm sorry we didn't do that first.
That's okay.
That's okay. So do we have a motion for to adjourn?
So moved.
Second,
Okay.
Council Reynolds,
Aye.
Council Flaherty,
Aye.
Council Maglio,
aye.
all in favor to adjourn.
Thank you. And everybody have a nice evening.
Thanks.
Good
Thanks,
night. Thank you.